Good afternoon and welcome to the DFS Army YouTube channel. I'm Razzle11 and you can find me on X at Razzle11Grinds. Going to get a late start here today. Some personal stuff, but we are seated and ready to get into everything. It is an 8-game main slate this evening. As always, I will be focusing on DraftKings as that is where a majority of my action is. If you do play on FanDuel, you can cut my pitcher pool into about a half, just because you don't have to be as creative. Pricing isn't quite as tight, so you don't have to punt a pitcher. Oh, you should never actually punt a pitcher, really. But that's a discussion for another day. But we will be kind of sticking with my recent trend, utilizing some of the uh, DK props to pinpoint some pitching that we should dig into deeper. But first, let's head over to our weather station here. Just get an idea of what's going on weather-wise today. Um, a lot of stuff on the early games, but thankfully we're just focusing on the Pitt and Tampa Bay game and below here. Um, Definitely uh, some cooler spots to look at and maybe take advantage of, especially in a couple of games that you might normally not want to take some pitching between the Cubs and A's, Angels and Cardinals. Um, those cold temperatures are very intriguing. I don't really know how the ballpark's going to play for the A's and major leaguers. Obviously, some weather. I don't think there's much to worry about, but we're going to need to wait for some official words as the day goes on. Um, I don't really worry about wind blowing out in San Diego. A lot of the California stadiums, um, especially at night games, the wind doesn't really do as much as you'd hope it does. The wind here for Tampa Bay playing in a minor league ballpark, since their ballpark is messed up from the hurricane, that's intriguing. You can see the hitter rating, everything. That's kind of frustrating because Drew Rasmussen is the second largest favorite on the day, or I should say Tampa Bay is. Um, his props might might be something that says that he might not go 5 innings, basically. So, but let's get into it. We'll switch over to the sportsbook here. Take a look at some of the game lines. Couple things to point out. Obviously, as mentioned, Rasmussen at minus 205. Highest favorite on the slate are the Dodgers at minus 225. Couple other ones that stand out: Bowden Francis and the Blue Jays minus 170 for me. Uh, Mikolas in that game where we might want to target pitching minus 155. Shocked that the game total hasn't gone to 7.5. In fact, the juice is slightly on the over. Speaking of 7.5, there is just one game with a 7.5 total, and it does have the juice on the under. Between Emerson Hancock and Jackson Jobe making, I believe it's his first major league start. Big time pitching prospect, big arm, super interesting spot. Despite him being, or the Tigers being the underdog, um, when we look at a couple props here, we're going to be interesting to see that I think he should project out better than Hancock, even though Hancock is the favorite in this matchup. Ben Brown, a minus 142 favorite, but game total 8.5. Um, if we see some weather clear up, I wouldn't be shocked to see that game total creep to 9, to be honest. Um, some of these other pitching spots, not really all that interested. Blanco minus 130, game total at 8 with juice on the under is something that has my attention. Um, Everybody might think back to last year's opening start for Blanco and his no hitter. Uh, Go out on a limb and say that's not going to happen again, but I guess never say never. Pitcher prop wise, strikeout numbers, a lot of lower K props today. Um, a lot of them in the 4.5 range. Rasmussen, Francis, Miles Mikolas all at 4.5. Mikolas is on the juice to the under. Francis a little better K prop than Rasmussen, but nothing super exciting. Blanco's 5.5, but juice is on the under, um, which is a little frustrating. Hancock 4.5 juice on the under. Job 4.5 juice on the over. So this is one of those spots that I was referring to where I think Job projects out stronger. There are going to be two more things that we look at with this matchup, and they're both going to kind of say Job is the better play. Unfortunately, last I looked, he didn't have an outs prop up, which would really help us out. But Ben Brown 5.5 with juice on the under. His juice on the under minus 170. So he's more likely to go under than Blanco, just according to the Vegas numbers. Glass now, the strongest K prop on the slate, uh, basically by, 2. Um, since the other 5.5s were all juice on the under, he's 6.5 juice on the over, and a struggling Atlanta offense after getting swept in San Diego. Now the K prop or the W props for the starting pitcher. Sorry, uh, one thing that stands out a lot here is Drew Rasmussen is just plus 275, despite Tampa Bay being the largest favorite. Rasmussen at just plus 275 to get the W. Uh, that should throw up a red flag that we might be looking at a guy that's not going to go 5 innings. There is no outs prop for him. At least there wasn't half an hour ago. But that's something that we should take notice of. Bowden Francis plus 145. I think he actually was, yep, he's the favorite on the slate as far as for pitchers to earn the W. Something definitely intrigues me there. Miles Mikolas plus 190. His opponent's plus 220 in Tyler Anderson. Not somebody I wanted to consider, but with some of these numbers, I feel like I had to consider Anderson, and even Soroka made my initial jot down list. But that's a big number of plus 380 for the W. There's just some positive news about Soroka throughout the spring, thinking that he was finally healthy and back to the pitcher that everybody thought he was going to be with Atlanta. Um, but taking on Toronto, not sure I can get there, but it is something to kind of look into. Blanco at plus 200, which actually moved from the note that I wrote down a half an hour ago at plus 195. So he's actually right behind Mikolas in terms of picking up the W, but he's ahead of a lot of other guys on the slate. And we did mention that he has arguably the second best K prop, um, which doesn't take much on this particular slate. Biggest news for me is right here. Um, and since I first looked at it, Job has moved from plus 275 to plus 270. So we get Emerson Hancock, whose team is the minus 120 favorite, as less likely to get the W than his opposing starting pitcher. Um, that's part of those flags that we kind of look for. Opposite of the Drew Rasmussen red flag. I guess this would be a red flag towards Hancock, but flashing green light for Jackson Jobe, maybe. Very interesting. There's no prop for Ben Brown, which is kind of annoying. Makes me believe that he's not going to pitch 5 innings because he also does not have an outs prop. Glass now plus 175, which would be the second best odds for a starting pitcher to pick up the W on this slate. But with Glass now, you always have to worry pitch count issues. And obviously, injury history is part of why they rely on some of those pitch count numbers. Earn runs allowed here. Wasn't a whole lot that stood out to me when I first looked through, but we're gonna go through them pretty quickly here. Rasmussen at under 1.5. So this is kind of an opposite of the whole W thing, but might be just a product of the fact that he might only go 4 innings um, or less. I have to dig in more. Maybe he's just not completely stretched out, and I'm not sure of. Obviously, he was one of the many Tampa Bay pitchers that dealt with injuries last season. Um, Francis under 2.5. I think I would have preferred to see it at over 1.5. Obviously, it's just nitpicking, but a lot of the stuff says that Francis is one of the better plays on this slate. Mikolas over 1.5, pretty strongly over. Anderson's under 2.5, which is kind of a little shocking, but it goes into the fact that we think that that game's going to be lower scoring due to weather. Blanco over 1.5, strongly over 1.5, which is a little frustrating. Jackson Jobe, here's another one. Obviously Hancock favorite, went through that. Um, Under 2.5 has the juice. Jackson Jobe set at 1.5. Obviously the over, but still, um, that's kind of similar to that Bowden Francis scenario. Just seeing 1.5 feels better, obviously. Um, Ben Brown over 1.5, which might not be the greatest thing if he's only going to go 4 innings. Glasnow under 1.5, obviously the strongest props on the slate for pitching. Then these outs recorded. Maybe we got some adjustments, but I don't think so. Yeah, we have nothing for Rasmussen. Francis has the strongest outs prop at over 17.5. Basically, DraftKings has it set at a 6 inning guy. Mikolas over 16.5. So probably a 6 inning guy, at least pitching into the sixth. Um, Anderson on the other side, just a 5 inning guy, probably under 15.5. Blanco at 15.5, so under or at 5 innings is very interesting, considering he is one of the ones, I guess, one of the top four in terms of win odds. Getting down to this matchup, there's nothing for Joe, but Emerson Hancock's out prop just 14.5. Um, that means it's, like a 5 inning guy with the potential to not finish the 5 innings. And like I mentioned, Glasnow, 15.5. That's basically saying he's going to be a 5 inning guy, which we can kind of expect. Obviously, the Dodgers have a strong bullpen and arm issues, injury issues, etc. When we compare it to some of the pricing points here, Glasnow obviously the most expensive. Jobe, pretty expensive for a guy making his first MLB start. But Bowden Francis at 8,300 is somebody that should garner quite a bit of ownership on this slate. Mikolas 7,300, cheap enough. He's just one of those guys that I don't know that really provides enough ceiling for us. His best start last year was just under 24 DK points. I mean, obviously, if you told me he put up 24 in the start, I would include him pretty solidly in my pool because that's not a number I want to turn down. Anytime we can get 20 plus from our SP, I don't care the price point. Just give me 20 plus from each of my starters, and I will be super happy, and I can focus on my bats. But there we have it. If you want to hit the comments, let me know uh, which guy is your guy on this slate. Let's eliminate Glass now, and let's talk about which guy you want to be on this slate. Mine's definitely going to be Jackson Jobe, uh, with some sprinkle of maybe even Soroka. I have to dig in more, but yeah, hit the comments. Let me know. Um, I try to read everything, but if you enjoy what I bring to you, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, get the alert anytime we drop videos here at DFS Army. If you want to join us, get access to our coaches, tools, sheets, Discord, etc., I will put links in the description below. And there will be promo codes listed in the description. So you definitely want to check that out. But again, best of luck to everybody on this Monday evening slate.